In at number 10, Hellboy. Although for the most part Hellboy is solving his supernatural problems with his fist, it's a big fist at that and one that needs to be stopped. The problem with Hellboy roaming the planet is that his superhuman abilities stem from his demonic nature. As we discovered in the newest reboot of the series, when Hellboy becomes a Nungun Rama, he unleashes the most hellish creatures the planet has ever known. Sure, he chose to return them back to the fiery pits of hell, but that should have been a wake-up call for humans. How long will humanity sit back and watch a man who physically embodies Satan as him and his supernatural buddies use our planet as a battleground? Oh, and let's not forget that he was summoned by a Nazi cult. Yeah, this guy needs to be stopped. In at number 9, Ozymandias. Born in 1939, Adrian was gifted with the highest levels of IQ and intelligence, making him not just one of the smartest people in the world, but also of the Watchmen. He led a very admirable life until becoming the main antagonist for the Watchmen, and at the age of 17 he inherited a large fortune from his parents' death, yet he chose to donate it all to charity. However, it is his mission to conquer the evils of men by being a superhero that should have us concerned. While some actions are more nefarious than others, who is really to decide where the line is for evil? Certainly not a brainiac born to rich German parents. Along with being named the smartest man on the planet, Adrian can also be considered a world-class athlete. He can throw large objects with little to no effort whatsoever, and sometimes those large objects are humans, like how we saw him manhandle the comedian. He's also even been able to fool Dr. Manhattan. As you can see, there are plenty of reasons why we should exhaust all efforts to stop him. In at number 8, Scarlet Witch. Wanda's history as a superhero is pretty all over the place. In Avengers Age of Ultron, her and her brother Quicksilver were teaming up with the out-of-control AI and proved that she was a force to be reckoned with. Once she sided with the Avengers, we felt a little better about the Scarlet Witch utilizing her powers to the fullest. However, that being said, Wanda has been able to rewrite reality as seen in House of M, where she teamed up with Doctor Doom to bring her children back into existence. This did not come without consequences though. Upon undertaking this enormous task, the Scarlet Witch summoned this cosmic force which completely took over her and her powers. This moment of complete loss of control should scare us to our core. Wanda can essentially alter reality to become whatever she wants. Now whether that's used for the betterment of society is up to her. If she ever believed the destruction of the universe would be a better starting point than the current reality, she'd be more than capable of seeing that plan through. In at number 7, Raven.
What do you don't stop? You win! I surrender! What's the matter? Afraid of the dark? I surrender!
Meditation and a cold demeanor are perhaps the only things keeping this scary overpowered superhero from just taking a wrecking ball to the universe. Born half human, half demon, Raven has to balance the negatives of both many times. Her demon roots have bestowed her with some unimaginable powers, but her human side negatively impacts these whenever her emotions get out of control. In the Teen Titans episode titled Switched, we really got a taste of just how connected her emotions and powers really are when Starfire took over Raven's body, using it to cause destruction via those out of control emotions. In terms of the destruction of our universe, if Raven's psychic and magical powers aligned with an emotion of, say, anger or vengeance, it could certainly be our demise. In at number 6, Thor. We've all seen just how powerful Thor can be in the MCU, but while they primarily focus his powers and abilities on saving the universe, we rarely get to see just how much destruction he could do without trying to save the universe. Thor not only wields the mythical Norse hammer Mjolnir, but also has a vast collection of powers that makes him very overpowered. Along with summoning lightning bolts, breaking spells, and opening interdimensional portals, Thor once lifted the Midgard serpent. Let that settle in for a moment. The serpent is believed to weigh the equivalent of half the Earth, and he just straight up tossed that snake into space. Not only does he possess these abilities, but at this point in his superhero career, he's mastered them to the point of godlike standards. Plus, his hammer can be utilized to channel the God Force, which has been said to be so strong it could kill an immortal being. Yeah, so how well does the fate of the universe look against someone that could do all of that? The answer is not good, my friends. Not good. In at number 5, the Silver Surfer.
everywhere this thing goes. 8 days later, the planet dies. All that you know is at an end.
When the Silver Surfer arrived on Earth, the Fantastic Four rightfully saw him as a villain. Even though he turned out to be trying to do good and, save his family, one cannot forget that as the Herald for Galactus, he used to help devour whole planets. If anyone is on their way to being the one that could destroy the universe, it'd be the guy that took an internship for destroying the universe. Norrin's ability to just navigate anywhere in the universe and travel at near limitless speeds gives him a real advantage for being able to pick off planets easily if he just undertook a new mission of, being the sole destroyer of everything that we know. Especially after being a slave to Galactus but managing to control his cosmic abilities later on, the Silver Surfer should be seen even more as a threat to the universe. In at number 4, Jean Grey.
Unleash your power! Let go, Jean! Jean, let go!
The Phoenix Force has possessed many throughout its time in the Marvel Universe, but no one terrified us more than when Jean Grey became a host. With Jean infused with the power of the Dark Phoenix, her abilities were fully unleashed, reaching new heights than ever before. They weren't just unleashed though, they were vastly out of her control. Instead of having a grip on her powers, this cosmic force began to dictate her actions. The scariest part of the Phoenix Force is that it can take apart anything at a molecular level and then absorb it and project said energy. That being said, if Jean wanted to dust our little universe, all she would need to do is consume the energy of a sun and it's lights out, game over from there. In at number 3, Dr. Manhattan.
Something lethal. Or if I know what that means.
Jonathan Osterman is by far one of the DC Universe's most powerful beings, and in the film The Watchmen we saw exactly what he was capable of doing. They showed so much of what he was capable. His abilities are pretty much unlimited, meaning that there's not much that he can't do. If in all of his omnipotent glory he decided today was the day the universe ended, he could finish that task in no time, and then just rebuild everything from scratch, with still time to make lunch. Dr. Manhattan is totally invulnerable to any and all harm, plus in collaboration with his teleportation abilities, he could just pop in and out of any universe to destroy it. Dare I say he could destroy not just the universe, but all of the universes. If you don't believe us, look at the effect that he had on the DC Universe alone. His altering of reality and Rebirth completely erased 10 years from the DC, resulting in the New 52 timeline. That's you, Dr. Manhattan. In at number 2, Professor X. We've always understood Charles Xavier to be this powerful mutant that usually uses his powers for assisting younger mutants in their journey of understanding themselves and controlling the destruction that they're capable of. In the comic books, Professor X typically exhibits this precise control over his telepathy, but in the film Logan we were able to see how his powers would affect the world if he lost control. Logan had to keep him far away from civilization so that his unstable state wouldn't harm anyone. And with all of that in mind, it's amazing that Charles has been able to not destroy the universe. Grant Morrison and Mark Miller, though, actually pitched a story that involved Charles turning evil in Marvel Tales' End of the World. This saw him becoming corrupted by a mistaken Cerebros programming and ultimately merging together to form an uber-powerful being called X-Terminus. If X-Terminus ever came to fruition, there would have been no stopping him from eliminating the entire Marvel Universe. Calm down, DC fanboys, it's not happening. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Superman. If you're a fan of Superman, you probably also disagree with this flawed view that he is the most bland superhero out there. Superman is scary overpowered, and there's been enough bone-chilling versions of him to prove this point. Superman is so strong that if he wanted to, he could just straight up push the Earth into the sun. And the Superman Prime version actually did see Superman destroying a universe. After getting lost in the multiverse after the Sinestro Corpse War, Sup started planet hopping looking for Earth Prime, and when he found a reality that wasn't up to his standards, he just destroyed it, like an Etch-a-Sketch. In Countdown to Final Crisis, where he fought against Monarch, he apparently found this perfect version of Earth. However, by the time that he got there, Monarch and his army had already destroyed the majority of the planet. This did not sit well with Superman Prime, leading him to tear apart Monarch's armor, releasing his quantum powers and unleashing the complete destruction of the entire universe. Oh, and there was that time that he sneezed and destroyed a universe.
In at number 10, Bast. Also known as the Panther God, Bast is the child of Ra, and first appeared in Fantastic Four issue 52 in 1966, but solely as a totem. It is the deity that the Black Panthers of Wakanda get their powers from, after proving themselves worthy of the mantle through trials, gaining the privilege of using the heart-shaped herb. A Wakandan legend states that when the 5 tribes fought for control of the nation, a warrior shaman received the vision from Bast that led him to the heart-shaped herb, and to the responsibility of becoming king of Wakanda and the very first Black Panther. In addition to this, whenever someone passes away, in the afterlife they are brought by Bast and Sekhmet to a mystical green valley in which they can run freely in peace for all of eternity. And at number 9, Kronos. Kronos was initially one of the Eternals of Earth, but due to an explosion from an experiment gone haywire, he lost his physical form, and was left being an abstract energy form. Silver lining though was that this gave him immortality and cosmic powers. In Kronos' first appearance, he took the soul of Arthur Douglas, a victim of Thanos', and transformed him into Drax the Destroyer in order to take on the Mad Titan, who was also his own grandson. Kronos was one of the many cosmic entities who fought alongside Adam Warlock in the Infinity Gauntlet series, in an attempt to stop Thanos from wielding the Infinity Gems.
Coming in at number 8, we have Iceman, aka Bobby Drake. As one of the earliest members of the X-Men, Bobby has had a lot of time over the years to explore his powers, and contrary to appearances, he can do far more than just convert his body into ice. Classified as an Omega-level mutant, the most powerful designation there is, Iceman is capable of not only controlling the temperature of all his own molecules, but is able to manipulate water molecules entirely as part of his own mass. This means the possibility for Bobby's powers are as intense and malleable as water itself, allowing him to freeze the blood within enemies' veins, travel instantly through a stream of water, or even cause another ice age if Bobby didn't hold back his full strength. Coming in at number 7, we've got to go with Barry Allen, aka The Flash. Barry's powers come from a deep connection to the Speed Force. He's not simply capable of moving extremely fast like many superheroes, but is actually using energy from the very concept of speed itself. The Speed Force allows Barry to travel at practically limitless rates, racing any potential adversary, and even allowing the Flash to travel through time and even alternate realities, moving so fast that he's capable of whizzing right past these fundamental laws of reality. Add enhanced senses and a whole lot of other perks to the Flash's power set, and he stands out as one of the most well-rounded and powerful members of the Justice League. Coming in at number 6, we have Thor Odinson, the God of Thunder. While several Marvel and DC superheroes have godlike powers, Thor is one of the very few that counts as a literal god. Having protected both Midgard and Asgard for thousands upon thousands of years, Thor has been able to hold off the Hulk in single combat, teamed up with a millennia's worth of his own selves to defeat Gore the God Butcher, and been able to both wield and reforge the unstoppable hammer, Mjolnir. Combined with eons of combat experience and the strength of Asgard flowing through his veins, and Thor is a hero that'll continue to be one of the most overpowered protectors of Earth for many thousands of years to come. Coming in at number 5, we have Robert Reynolds, aka the Sentry. For years, the Sentry has been one of the physically strongest Avengers, claiming to wield the strength of 1,000,000 exploding suns. But with all of these powers comes the major downside of the Void, a representation of Robert's negative personality that must be fought against every time he uses his powers. Despite this frequent setback, the Sentry has long been one of the most important members of the Avengers team, iconically dispatching Carnage in a situation when no one else could, and being a last defense against some of the stronger foes that have ever attempted to invade the planet Earth. Coming in at number 4, we have the Man of Steel himself, Superman. The last son of the doomed planet Krypton, Superman is a beacon to the rest of the DC universe, a symbol of how good and hope-inspiring a superhero should be, and he luckily has the power set to back it up. Unless kryptonite or magic is involved, Superman can practically do anything, and the limits of his strength seem to only be self-imposed ones so that he doesn't literally shatter the planet with each punch. But even with all of this power, Superman never wavers in his quest for truth and justice, and remains a steadfast inspiration for everyone. All of that power and the world's most hopeful outlook? That's one hell of an overpowered combination. Coming in at number 3, we have Dr. Manhattan. The only being from the Watchmen universe with actual superpowers, Dr. Manhattan's powers compensate for his uniqueness by making him nearly unstoppable. Capable of seeing the entire timeline of existence at once, Dr. Manhattan has such godlike power that he could barely relate to being human at all anymore, and seems capable of any task he puts his mind to, such as creating an elaborate palace on Mars, to altering the entire course of the DC universe during the events of the New 52. Whatever the future holds for Dr. Manhattan, we can rest assured that he'll be viewing it through an unknowable, different lens than our own. Coming in at number 2, we have Bruce Wayne, aka the Batman. As a member of the Justice League with no actual superpowers, Batman has somehow been able to keep up with aliens, metahumans, and even literal gods, and does such a good job of it that he's considered one of the League's most important and essential members. No matter what situation gets thrown at Batman, whether he's fighting with a team or tremendously outgunned on his own, Batman somehow always manages to save the day and defeat the villain, meaning that one of the most overpowered characters in comic books might just be the guy who technically isn't supposed to have any powers except for being rich and being smart. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Incredible Hulk. The Hulk has always had one of the most overpowered abilities in the entire Marvel universe, with his literally limitless strength still yet to find a breaking point, but an extra ability that earns the Hulk a top spot on this list is his recently revealed power to be incapable of dying. With all Gamma creatures being connected to the dark being known as the One Below All, the Hulk has gained the ability to rise from the dead at night, even if his Bruce Banner form had only died the previous day. Combined with his already incredible talent for healing and regeneration, and the Hulk seems to be more unstoppable than he's ever been in the past.
Number 10. Wonder Woman. Diana Prince, the daughter of Zeus. Okay, so before I start, I just want to say that Wonder Woman is not always overpowered. Sometimes she's way too depowered, but usually she's right perfect where she needs to be. But there are some instances where they make her way too powerful, just kind of like any other hero. Usually Wonder Woman isn't bulletproof, and that's why she blocks away bullets with her gauntlets. But there are times where they have made her completely bulletproof, or insanely fast, like almost speedster level fast, where she can move faster than speeding bullets, which is a bit crazy. Wonder Woman is one of the most powerful and coolest DC heroes, and this happens with every character, sometimes writers make heroes, or in this case gods, just way too powerful. Number 9, Morpheus. Morpheus, also known as the God of Dreams. For the most part, he kind of just does his own thing, and hasn't really shown up a ton in the main DC continuity, but he has gradually shown up more and more over the years. He is very powerful, and he lives in a world of dreams, where he can essentially do whatever he chooses, because the dream world is his domain. So if someone were to fight him there, they would most likely not fare so well. For the most part, he's considered a good guy, but a better description would probably be anti-hero, since he does kind of just show his bad side every once in a while.
In at number 8, Gloriana Demeter. Known also as Glory, this overpowered superhero comes from the Awesome Comics comic book series. She's half Amazon, half demon warrior, and if that's not enough to make you think she needs to be stopped, then let's continue. Her very creation was an alliance between the Lady Demeter of the Amazonians and the demon lord Silverfall of the underworld, who sought to fight against the human world. She may look like Wonder Woman, but Glory has proven to be one of the Amazonians' finest warriors. Because she's a merger of two very separate schools of thought, Glory took to the world of man to find a place that she could call home. What's troubling is that she often struggles to control her own savagery. Her mixed family history of Amazon goddess and demon means that Glory has a number of superhuman abilities that make her more powerful than all other Amazonians. And as I mentioned though, even if she's on Earth to see through acts of kindness, that demon is still a part of her, and when Glory transforms into her monstrous form, she has been known to assault even the best of friends. In at number 7, Luther Strode. Once a skinny young kid interested in comic books and video games, Luther underwent a drastic transformation upon pushing his mind and body to exceed human limitations. By putting focus on the mind, body, and spirit in one direction, all three aligned, bringing them under his control. Due to this, Luther gained incredible reflexes, a sense for danger, and Hercules-level strength. Biologically, he's classified as what we believe a perfect human would look like. However, it's his overwhelmingly authoritative charisma that spells trouble for this overpowered superhero. Whenever a human gains control of superhuman abilities, the alarm bells in our brains should go off. Just because he's considered to be a perfect physical specimen does not mean he would be without the normal psychological flaws that every human has. Among all of his powers and abilities, his most overpowered are his intimidation and deception tactics, both of which should be considered threatening when it comes to handling him. In at number 6, Danny Phantom. Ah yes, Danny, the 14-year-old 9th grader who gained ghost powers by an accident in his parents' lab, thus taking on the alter ego of Danny Phantom. First off, how crazy is this kid's town if they need an overpowered teenager to save it from ghost attacks? He can transform into his ghost form whenever he wants, pass through walls, fly, and take advantage of every other ghostly ability. Here's why we should be scared of Danny and why he needs to be stopped though. In the episode called The Ultimate Enemy, we see that even Danny himself views his powers as being too overpowered. In that episode, Danny witnesses a future where he gives into his ghost side and forgoes his human roots to become fully ghost. Going full ghost would mean that his powers are greatly enhanced, but he sees that this also makes him extremely evil and thus the discovery that he is his own worst enemy. In at number 5, Captain Planet.
Captain Planet! Captain Planet!
This superhero is so overpowered that he actually doesn't care what people think about his mullet and even makes puns to taunt his enemies. If you got time for jokes while saving the planet, then I'm sorry, but that is too much power. We need people to actually care about taking care of the environment instead of waiting for the mullet man to be summoned by the 5 Planeteers. The scariest thing about Captain Planet is what we don't know. The series helped define what most of his powers are, that being flight, super strength, high durability, and shape-shifting. However, no matter how powerful his enemy is, Captain Planet will find a new way, a new power, or a new ability to take them down. Plus, have we ever thought about what would happen if he finally saved the planet? What if he stopped climate change and fixed the environment? Would that mean he's out of work? The day this overpowered super no longer has a mission is a day that we don't want to see. In at number 4, Freakazoid.
I also want to thank all the villains on our show. Haven't they been great sports?
This overpowered blue-skinned superhero was formed when a teenager named Dexter Douglas was sucked into the internet, bestowing him with an overload of information which transformed him into the Freakazoid. He is the personification of wacky cartoons, and over the course of his short-lived TV show, Freakazoid showed some freaky powers. The super is essentially a god in his own world with the ability to not only fly and travel at light speed, but to break the fourth wall whenever he so chooses. This overpowered ability allows him to create objects out of thin air just to assist him in whatever villain he's taken out. And that should be recognized as problematic. We're not saying we know how to stop this super, but I have a strong feeling that shutting off the internet would help. In at number 3, Invincible. Also known as Mark Grayson, this super from the Invincible comic series looks strikingly similar to Booster Gold. He's a younger superhero on the scene, and his father Omni-Man actually made our first list of overpowered supers. So now you have his son with virtually the same abilities and powers, but with much less experience in using them. For evidence to this, you have to look no further than his first villain, which was his high school teacher. His own father believes his son has too much power, and later in his career he formed a group called the Guardians of the Globe, but his own dad killed the original members, and we're assuming it was an attempt to guide his son back to the Viltrumite mission of taking over the Earth instead of fighting for it. Upon resisting his father's wishes, Omni-Man would beat his son up across the world to the point of leaving him in a coma, which so far has been the only way to stop Invincible Boy. In at number 2, Samaritan. We all know that time travel has extreme consequences, but for Samaritan it's how he gained his overpowered abilities. Hailing from the 35th century, this man was selected by scientists to travel back in time to alter events in hopes of saving their future. During this process of time travel, he was exposed to an energy called the Empyrean Fire that gifted him with incredible powers. Things such as energy projection, flight, super strength, and dimensional travel all became new powers for this once ordinary man. While he was successful in saving the Space Shuttle Challenger from being destroyed, when he returned to his present, the world was a better place, but his family was gone. In fact, they had no longer existed at all. Now imagine that. You say goodbye to your family, then travel back in time, become a new superhero, time travel again, and then your family is gone forever? Not exactly events that would create a stable mind. But stable or unstable though, the Samaritan has a ludicrous level of powers and the ability to alter the space-time continuum, which is enough for us to want to stop it. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Ben 10. For most of these heroes, our reasons for wanting them to be stopped stem from their lack of experience with their powers and just life in general. That's why Ben 10 takes the cake for the most overpowered. Ben Tennyson is a 10-year-old boy who, while on a camping trip, happened to nearly get crushed by a meteor crash where he would later discover an alien cargo pod. Upon snooping around the alien pod, Ben finds a watch-like device called the Omnitrix. The Omnitrix allows Ben to transform into a number of alien life forms, each equipped with their own unique powers. For the most part, each alien form had its limitations and weaknesses, but as time went on, Ben was able to gain full control over the most powerful alien transformation called Alien X. This form lists Ben in the Celestial God category, meaning he can warp the fabric of time, space, and even reality, all of which are enough evidence to drop him into the overpowered category, and because it's a 10-year-old boy in this position of power, we gotta stop him. Someone put Ben 10 on a timeout. In at number 10, Cyclops. We all like to poke fun at Scott Summers every now and again, but we should actually appreciate just how nice this overpowered superhero is. It would be a rare occasion if Cyclops just decided his new mission was to destroy the entire universe. That being said, he definitely could do some serious damage if he were ever to lose control of his powers. As white bread as he looks, many should fear the mutant because of his lack of control over his optic blasts. After losing his ruby quartz visor, which keeps these powers in check, Cyclops has proven he could level a city just by accident. We've even seen the mutant vaporize one of Wolverine's hands, proving that he could even break through adamantium. If he went rogue, the universe wouldn't stand a chance. In at number 9, Legion. David Haller is an odd duck for sure, and some may not consider him to be a superhero, but hey, if Professor X is your dad, we're putting you on this list. David has the ability to develop specific mutations at a moment's notice, and combined with the character's split personality with each power, he is one scary overpowered superhero. On one occasion where Legion had manifested his powers, he absorbed the personality traits of a terrorist leader. If that's not enough of a red flag, let's not forget the rampage that he went on, traveling back in time to kill Magneto and his father, again by accident. Thankfully, David now has a neural switchboard wristband that gives him more control over these powers without the personality side influencing his decisions. But if he ever wanted to though, Legion would be more than capable of destroying the universe.
Number 8, Trigon. Ah, good old Trigon. If you're a fan of Teen Titans, then you are well aware of who this guy is. He's the father of one of the founding members of the Teen Titans, Raven. Trigon is a villain that just seems to always come back, and that's probably because he is so freaking powerful. He can travel through dimensions, fly, has super strength, invulnerability, molecular reconstruction, mind control, telekinesis, telepathy, and pyrokinesis. I mean, the guy is stacked with powers. Maybe even has too many. It's a miracle that the Titans have been able to take him down at all. And he is so obsessed with making his daughter join him on the dark side. But luckily, he hasn't been fully successful on that dream yet. Number 7, Rao. Rao is not a god that all humans would know. Some do, but not all. That's because he's not one of Earth's gods. He is one of Krypton's. If you're wondering why that name sounds familiar, it's also because that is what the red sun of Krypton is named after. Also, Rao has been brought up multiple times over the years in the TV show Supergirl. I mean, in the show, humans even started their own church to worship him, because over time, humans began to learn more about him thanks to Superman and Supergirl. Usually that was only strictly on Supergirl's Earth 38, but after Crisis and the Earth merged, now there have actually been some very subtle references on the Flash that humans on now the main Earth know who Rao is, which is also just a really cool touch. But Rao is very powerful, and also kind of crazy. I mean, there are different stories about him, some still in continuity, some not. I mean, that is the comic book world for you. But at one point, he tried to become immortal and started taking life from people who followed him. It's also been stated that he created Krypton, but other stories have said otherwise. Number 6, Athena. Athena is one of the Olympians. She is the goddess of wisdom and defense of war. Her powers include deaccelerated aging. Basically, she doesn't age at the same rate as humans. She also has super strength, stamina, telepathy, invulnerability, and magic. Not only does that make her insanely powerful already, but she also has other abilities like weaponry and martial arts, which makes her extremely deadly if you were to face off with her in the battlefield. Similar to the other Olympians, in some iterations, the Olympians only hold on to these powers as long as people still worship them. Number 5, Zeus. Zeus has the power of lightning. That's not a shocker. No pun intended. Okay, actually no, that was totally intended. But this power is super strong and allows him, in a sense, to control the weather. In some variations of the comics, he needs people to worship him, like I stated earlier, to gain or hold how powerful he actually is. If people stop, then Zeus, his power would fade over time. Zeus can not only control the weather, but he can also resurrect people from the dead. He also has the ability to shapeshift and create life. Yes, he is the father of Wonder Woman, so that fits. Number 4, Ares. Ares, yet another Olympian on this list. He is the god of war. So, this guy doesn't want peace. Right off the bat, it tells you that. His powers include teleportation, darkness manipulation, dimensional travel, magic, size alteration, super speed and super strength, telepathy, and mind control. Yeah, he has quite a few. Probably a little bit too much, but he also has great skills that include weaponry and martial arts. And if you're thinking, I wonder why he looks so familiar or sounds familiar. Well, you're not wrong. If you saw the 2017 film Wonder Woman, he was the main villain of that movie, and he fought Wonder Woman at the end of the film. Although he was unsuccessful, he still proved himself to be a formidable foe. And surprisingly, once he turned into his true form, he looked pretty comics accurate. Number 3, Lucifer. So, Lucifer is a fallen angel who basically led a rebellion against the presence, and well, he lost. He's quite powerful, and can shape matter, energy, and time. He has the ability of super strength, acidic blood, he can fly, let out a sonic cry, speak to animals, and even telepathy. Yeah, this guy is loaded with powers. However, in the New 52 reboot, they sort of made Lucifer a little less overpowered, relying more on his armies rather than his powers itself. But nonetheless, he's still pretty freaking powerful. At number 2, we have Darkseid. Darkseid is one of the biggest foes in the DC universe. He has gone up against the Justice League, that right away tells you how strong he is. He's not only powerful with his fists, but powerful with his Omega beams that shoot straight out from his eyeballs. The cool thing with these Omega beams is that he can control them in any direction. Yeah, not even Superman can do that with his heat vision. These beams are not only incredibly deadly, so if you get hit by one, you're most likely screwed, but they are also incredibly fast. And in the past, have even been known to catch up to certain speedsters, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Number 1, the Presence. Yeah, this is not really a shocker. So if you don't know, the Presence is basically DC's versions of God, like the main god. The Presence is insanely powerful. Some say the most powerful thing in the entire DC universe. It can do anything. I mean, its powers are limitless. It gave the Spectre his powers, which, as you know, the Spectre is considered to be one of the most powerful beings as well. So, I mean, that makes sense once you realize where his powers actually came from. Similar to Spectre, if the Presence takes a human form, the human can die, but the Presence will live on. It can grant powers, resurrect anyone it chooses, and keep going into any host it chooses. If there was a DC, kind of totem pole of the most powerful to the least, the Presence sits alone at the very, very top.
Coming in at number 10, we've got a bit of an honorable mention with Franklin Richards, as he's not quite old enough to be a proper superhero yet, but man, oh man, is he ever powerful. Initially believed to be one of the most powerful mutants in all of existence as the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman, it was eventually revealed that Franklin's reality warping powers were so great that he'd altered his own X gene in the past to give an origin story to his own incredible powers. Capable of creating entire universes like some sort of young human celestial, Franklin Richards is one of the most powerful reality manipulators in the entire Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 9, we have Captain Atom. Originally a scientific volunteer named Nathaniel Atom, Nathaniel chose to take part in experiments at a research facility called the Continuum. Originally meant to pilot a special dimensional transfer vehicle during a cross-dimension experiment, Nathaniel was seemingly blown apart and atomized by radiation during the experiment, only to reappear moments later as an energy-based life form. Captain Atom's powers seem almost godlike to an extent, capable of manipulating matter and all of the energy fields associated with it, but with the Captain frequently needing to return to the continuum whenever he'd begin having issues with remaining corporeal or maintaining control of his powers. And while the Justice League doesn't ally with him often given the potential danger of his radioactive abilities, he really knows how to pack an atomic punch when he's needed.
Up next at 8 is Hela. Hela is based on the Norse goddess Hel, and is a constant antagonist of Thor's. The character first appeared in Journey into Mystery issue 102, and was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. She's the daughter of a different incarnation of Loki who had died during a previous Asgardian Ragnarok. Odin appointed her as the goddess of the dead, and she would often butt heads with him and Thor over her attempts to expand her power to the dead who dwell in Valhalla. Speaking of, next up at number 7 is Thor. Perhaps the most beloved god on this list, Thor is based off of the Thor of Norse mythology. In the comics, he's the Asgardian god of thunder, who first debuted in Journey into Mystery issue 83 back in 1962. Prior to this, another version of the character had appeared in Venus issues 12 and 13 back in 1951. Created by Stan Lee, Larry Lieber, and Jack Kirby, the aim was to craft a character who was stronger than the strongest person. As Lee stated back in 1992, I quote, "It finally came to me. Don't make him human. Make him a god." Kirby had initially drafted up a version of a Thor character for DC back in the 50s, but the one that he did for Marvel in the 60s really stuck. Enamored by legends, he wanted to take the Norse Thor legends of the real world and give them a modernist twist. Up next, number 6, Odin. Speaking of Thor, let's take a look at his father, Odin. Also based off of the Odin of Norse mythology, Odin is an incredibly powerful Asgardian, and can tap into the Odin Force, an ancient and vast Asgardian power which includes energy projection, creating illusions and force fields, levitation, telepathic communication with other Asgardians, molecular manipulation, hypnotism towards humans, control of Asgardian life forces, teleportation, and the channeling of lightning. Yeah, so dude can do a lot. Up next at 5, Eternity. Eternity is a wickedly cool abstract entity. Essentially every universe in the multiverse manifests itself as an anthropomorphic being known as Eternity. Eternity embodies Earth 616 reality, along with his sister Infinity. First appearing in 1965's Strange Tales 138, Eternity was the collective consciousness of all life, and was dependent upon it. Nowadays, Eternity rarely manifests himself, but when he does, it's because of an imminent threat to the universe, like when Thanos collected all of the Infinity Gems and imprisoned Eternity, proving that the entity isn't entirely omnipotent. That being said, Thanos ranked Eternity as standing above all other abstract entities. Hey, at least that's something to be proud of. And at number 4, Gaia. Gaia, an elder god, first appeared in Doctor Strange Volume 2, Issue 6 back in 1975, but under a different name, Mother Nature. A few months later, that name was changed to Gaia in Issue 4 of Giant-Sized Avengers. She possesses mystical powers of an unidentified nature, and appeared on Earth long before any life did. Her creation is due to the sentient biosphere known as the Demiurge, who made her at the dawn of life on Earth. Concerned with nature and evolution, Gaia has merged with Earth itself, although she often takes a humanoid form. She's also the mother of many other gods, and is often referred to as the Mother Goddess, birthing the likes of Thor after she and Odin mated. Gaia also has an interesting connection to our next number, in at 3, Set. Debuting in Marvel Future Volume 2, Issue 6, Set is also an elder god, but of a much more contemptuous nature than Gaia. While Gaia was concerned with life and geology flourishing, Set realized that if he devoured his fellow elder gods, he could add their power to his own, which has made Set technically the very first murderer according to Marvel. Other gods began to follow his ways, causing them to become corrupt and turn into demons. Set has a bond with reptiles, and often takes a reptile form. He even brought upon the emergence of the Serpent Men, although that race didn't last overly long compared to humanity. Up next at 2, Death. Death is one of the entities in the Marvel Universe who has had a major impact on the events of Earth and its heroes. This is primarily due to Thanos, and his infatuation with the character. His quest for the Infinity Gems and omnipotence was to prove himself worthy for Death, and to carry out her wishes of correcting the imbalance of living to dead beings in the universe. She's also the hots for Deadpool, which is pretty great. Aside from her history with Earth, Death is the embodiment of decay and destruction, and was born along with the universe itself. She has no true form, but often manifests as a hooded human skeleton, and she lives in the realm of death, a place inaccessible to the living. She first appeared in Captain Marvel issue 26 back in 1973. And last but not least, in at number 1, Galactus. Despite not being the most powerful entity on this list, Galactus is arguably the most prominent. The first minus the Asgardians to come to mind when you think of Marvel and gods. In 1966, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby collaborated on a new antagonist to add to their their incredibly successful flagship title, Fantastic Four. The idea was to craft a character that broke out of the current supervillain mold. According to Lee in an interview back in 1993, I quote, "Having dreamed up many powerful baddies, we felt the only way to top ourselves was to come up with an evildoer who had almost godlike powers. Therefore, the natural choice was some sort of demigod." And what about Kirby? Well, he dived into biblical inspirations for the character's design, describing Galactus and his angelic herald Silver Surfer as mythical figures, and noted that they were the first gods. Perhaps the most famous of the Marvel gods, Galactus was initially an explorer known as Galen of Ta, who existed prior to the Big Bang. When the Big Crunch occurred, he was bonded with Eternity, where he changed and gestated for 1 billion years before emerging. In order to sustain himself, he must devour planets for energy. This is when he created the Silver Surfer as a herald to find planets for him to devour, and how the character came upon Earth.
Number 10. Superboy Prime. Superboy Prime was a Superboy from another universe. But in that universe, he knew of characters like Superman, but turns out that he also came from the planet Krypton on his Earth. Now, long story short, he ended up becoming a bad guy. A very super powerful bad guy. I mean, he entered another Earth by ripping through the dimensional barrier. With just his strength. He is one of Superman's most powerful villains, hands down. Number 9. Apocalypse. He is widely regarded as the world's first mutant. Apocalypse is considered to be one of, if not the strongest of them all. Along with his mutant powers, he is also enhanced with celestial technology, which makes him even more OP. He's immortal, he has super strength, speed, durability, teleportation, telekinesis, self-molecular manipulation, healing factor, energy blasts, energy absorption, energy transfer, and super intelligence. Yep. The dude is stacked. Like, no wonder it always takes a ton of heroes to try to stop him. And even when he's defeated, he always comes back. He's never gone for good.
And at number 8, Superman.
You think you can threaten my mother?
Arguably one of the strongest characters in the DC world, Superman is beyond ready with a host of superpowers to prepare him for any given situation. Superman is often held as the pinnacle of justice and moral superiority, which is perhaps one of his more annoying superpowers. Although the more threatening side to him that should be stopped is his ability to live forever and fire friggin' laser beams from his eyes. Again, all of these overpowered abilities are in regards to these heroes operating on Earth, and the comic books have played with this idea before. For example, the time that Superman just decided to take over the entire Earth and establish a dictatorship. Hope you have your kryptonite ready, because we're going to stop Superman altogether. In at number 7, Supergirl. Who's more overpowered than Superman, you ask? Well, how about his cousin Kara Zor-El? Due to Kara also being a child of Krypton, she maintains all of the same powers and abilities as Superman, making them physical equals. However, even so, it's been argued that the last daughter of Krypton may be a little bit stronger than her cousin. Several times the two of them have even teamed up against villains, and repeatedly they have commented on her greater strength. Although, they could have been trying to mess with Superman's brain, but if you look into her strengths, they may be right on the mark with that one. Supergirl needs to be stopped, because the last thing that we would want is a family of supers from Krypton showing off on Earth. In at number 6, Shazam.
It kind of tickles.
Look, just because this overpowered superhero's name sounds like something a magician would say before pulling a rabbit out of a hat doesn't mean we shouldn't take him seriously. Each letter in his name stands for a different Greek mythological entity, those being Solomon, Hercules, Atlas, Zeus, Achilles, and Mercury. Want to get really scared of this superhero? He is so powerful that he was able to be ripped apart by the vacuum of space and then completely bring himself back together. On top of being able to transform from the body of a child into a superhero just by saying the word Shazam, he also practices magic. I mean, with a name like that, how could you not, right? Well, in terms of DC Comics, those who are proficient in magic often gain significant advantages over all other powers. In at number 5, Martian Manhunter. First off, anyone who introduces themselves as a Martian Manhunter needs to be stopped. How has this odd alien mixture of Batman and Superman been allowed to roam free? Martian Manhunter is so ridiculously overpowered that he has even been nicknamed the Swiss Army knife superhero. His powers are evenly matched with Superman, but with some extra abilities kind of sprinkled in. Along with heat vision, the Manhunter can also see in different spectrums, which means even if someone was using invisibility, he could spot them. Now, if you think that's too much power, let's not forget that he can also read minds, shapeshift, and access telekinesis. To top it all off as to why this overpowered DC superhero needs to be stopped, the only evidence required is that Superman himself has said Manhunter is the only Justice League member that he fears. Thankfully, there's only one of him left. In at number 4, Captain Atom.
I control radiation, Superman. That includes red sun radiation.
Also known as Nathaniel Atom, he was a United States Air Force officer during the Vietnam War. After being framed for a crime that he did not commit, Nathaniel was sentenced to death, but was first invited to take part in a military experiment. The experiment was sure to kill him, but if he were somehow able to survive, he would receive a presidential pardon. And after surviving the experiment of putting him in an alien spacecraft and setting off a nuclear bomb under it with Atom inside, the metal fused with his body and launched him 20 years into the future. Now with his atomic powers, he can control the quantum field, absorb cosmic energy, and do everything a superhero can do in regards to invulnerability, super speed, and flight. Although listen to this statement from Captain Atom and it will be all the evidence you need for why he needs to be stopped. He says, "My name is Captain Atom, as in A-bomb, as in nuclear fission, as in the end of the world." Yeah, he said that. Stop him, somebody. In at number 3, Dr. Manhattan.
Something lethal. Or if I know what that means.
After appearing in The Watchmen and the recent events of DC Rebirth, the once nuclear physicist named Dr. Jonathan Osterman became an official member of the DC universe, although it's his godlike identity of Dr. Manhattan that we should be fearful of. A terrible accident in an intrinsic field subtractor had completely transformed him into the blue anti-hero that we must now stop. The Doctor is impervious to all assaults, can manipulate all atomic and subatomic particles, and does not need food or water to stay alive. Wow. He doesn't need food or water to stay alive. Like, how are we gonna stop this guy? The reason we should be suspicious of this overpowered superhero is that his actions make it difficult to classify whether or not he's good or evil. So, let's just stop him. In at number 2, Phantom Stranger. This overpowered superhero is a mysterious mystic who has walked the earth for centuries. Although he has only appeared a few times in the comic books, when he did show up, you knew that something big was going to happen. The Phantom Stranger has a ridiculous amount of superpowers that seems to never end, with his magical abilities really knowing no bounds. Aside from being immortal, he can generate energy bolts, teleport, and even stop other magic in its tracks. His real name is Judas, and after having a big hand in killing the Son of God, he was, for whatever reason, gifted with all of these abilities. With all of those powers though, Judas is unable to directly interfere with the crisis and is implored to only guide the heroes. God forbid one day he attempts to overrule this stipulation, we would be in for a world of hurt. Last in our number 1 spot, the Spectre. Before becoming this overpowered hero, the Spectre was Jim Corrigan, a Gotham City police detective. When his fiancée Gwen was kidnapped, the Phantom Stranger guided him to where she was being held. Unfortunately for Jim, it was a trap, and soon his soul would be imbued with divine powers, dubbing him the Spectre. Spectre is another one of those heroes that have near unlimited powers, and on top of that, he's a supernatural being tied to a human host on a mission to strike fear in villains around the world. He literally has shown how destructive these powers can be when we saw him completely obliterate an entire universe in a blink of an eye. Now ask yourself, is this the kind of power that a human should have? Yeah, we didn't think so either.
Number 10, Gohan. I know you're all thinking, Gohan, not Goku. If you're a Dragon Ball Z fan, you might be thinking that Gohan is a weird character for me to have picked from the series. But just hear me out. While Gohan struggles to go Super Saiyan and unlock his full potential in terms of his power level, when he finally does, he is a force to be reckoned with. Not to mention a lot of the Saiyans have died multiple times in the series, and yet Gohan seems to survive many fights. Part of Gohan's armor comes from being close to Piccolo, who pretty much only dies as much as he does to protect Gohan. In other words, having Piccolo as a meat shield makes it pretty unlikely that Gohan will die in a battle should his green friend be around. Not to say that he's never died, cause, you know, I mean, he has. Number 9, Batman. Well, Batman does not have any actual powers. He still manages to be one of the most overpowered superheroes in comics. Why? Well, because he doesn't even need powers. The feats he has managed to accomplish without them prove just how OP he truly is. He manages to prove himself as Captain America's equal in the JLA/Avengers crossover, even managing to defeat him with deduction and words. He sacrifices himself for Gotham and appears to have been destroyed in the explosion at the end of the film Dark Knight Rises, but then JK, he survived. And in Dark Knight Returns, he takes on Superman and beats him. Batman is also always so insanely obsessed with being prepared that he is near impossible to defeat, making him often undefeatable and undestroyable. Even when you think you've got him right where you want him, he's probably just thinking the exact same thing about you. And he's almost always right. His plot armor guarantees it. Plot armor, the best armor, indestructible. Number 8, Juggernaut. I really appreciate just how overpowered Juggernaut really is. To really appreciate just how overpowered Juggernaut really is, you have to understand who he is first. Juggernaut is really Kane Marco, the son of Dr. Kurt Marco. Kurt would later become the stepfather to Charles Xavier, making Charles Kane's brother when Charles's mother Sharon married Kane's father. While Charles is a powerful telepathically powered mutant, Kane is not. He's just a regular guy. That is, until he accepts the Crimson Gem of Sidorak, which grants him unlimited amounts of strength, durability, and stamina. He is rendered immortal with the gem's powers and is therefore unstoppable in a fight. Only entire superpowered armies or insanely powerful enemies are really able to disable him, which is pretty crazy considering at the end of the day, he's just a guy with a gem. Number 7, Carnage. It's funny how we all thought Cletus Cassidy had maybe finally kicked the bucket a few times over the years, and yet he's often just come back instead stronger and even more crazy. His character transformation really serves the point I was trying to make earlier of how in comics it always feels like writers are trying to outdo themselves. Cletus went from being a crazy serial killer who was already fairly dangerous and terrifying on his own to being merged with the young symbiotic offspring of Venom, Carnage. Combined, they wreaked so much havoc and mayhem that Venom and Spider-Man were forced to team up in an attempt to handle the villain. In Absolute Carnage, resurrected Cletus bonded with the Grendel symbiote to create a new and improved, even more terrifying symbiotic army which threatened to awaken the big, cosmic, symbiotic big bad known as Null, the first god of the Abyss and the god of symbiotes. During the Absolute Carnage event, Carnage terrorized the entire Spider-Verse and Marvelverse when he worked to track down and hunt any and all characters who had ever bonded to a symbiote, which, it turns out, is quite a lot of people. Number 6, Apocalypse. He's a really hard one to beat because he's always evolving. When evolution is your mutant power, it means you can alter your physiology to become ever stronger, ever more invincible, and ever more powerful, which is exactly what Apocalypse does. Add in the fact that he also used celestial technology to modify his body, and you have a foe who is virtually undefeatable. Basically, you join Apocalypse or you die. There isn't a lot of wiggle room usually. Fortunately, right now he's more on the good side, working with those he normally opposed to ensure the survival of mutants in a much less violent way than normal for him. Thank goodness, because even with all the mutants of the world coming together now, Apocalypse is still not an enemy they'd be able to easily deal with. Number 5, Super Skrulls. I mean, even if we're just talking about regular Skrulls, they're pretty overpowered in terms of all that they can accomplish. Skrulls are an alien race with the ability to shapeshift, allowing them to infiltrate the ruling government and military forces of a planet. But Skrulls didn't stop there. When Skrulls were first introduced in the Fantastic Four in the 60s, one thing they couldn't do was adapt to a being's superpowered abilities. That didn't stop them though from using technology to try and emulate the powers of the Fantastic Four, however, as they impersonated them. That didn't stop them though from using technology to try and emulate the powers of the Fantastic Four, however, as they still tried to impersonate them. In the end though, their technology and not so ingenious plan was their downfall, and the FF won the day, outsmarted them, and thwarted a Skrull invasion of planet Earth. Years later though, we'd learn of Super Skrulls, who succeeded where their ancestors had failed. These are Skrulls who are given specific superpowers which also allow them to infiltrate the ranks of Earth's superheroes, eventually creating mass paranoia among the superhero community. As if there wasn't already enough mass paranoia with just regular Skrulls. Number 4, Galactus. When Galactus comes for you, you better hope you have someone powerful on your side. like Squirrel Girl. No, I'm not joking. In the Unbeatable Squirrel Girl series from 2015, Squirrel Girl ends up taking on the big, hungry cosmic threat herself and ends up preventing him from feeding on the life energy of the Earth. Surprisingly, Squirrel Girl is also OP in her own way. The thing about Galactus is although he's filled with the power cosmic, which makes him nigh undefeatable in most cases, it also makes him super hungry. He burns a lot of calories just existing, which is why he is forced to feed on planets. His need to feed makes him a villain because he opposes our hero's main objective, which is usually to protect the universe or the Earth, but it also means that his intent isn't primarily malicious. The guy is just hungry. And while he is a literal massive threat, because he's massive, he's also needed to ensure balance in the cosmos. So he's kind of both a villain and a neutral figure, and sometimes a hero. Number 3. Thanos. Now of course Thanos in the comics is still a big deal, but in the MCU I feel like they really beefed him up even more. So much so that a lot of people compare Thanos to Darkseid. Thanos is kind of like Marvel's Darkseid equivalent, even in the comics, sure, but the MCU really lifted him up to be on the same level as DC's Darkseid and make him once again worthy of that comparison. Thanos is also obviously super overpowered in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he is armed with the Infinity Gauntlet and wielding all 5 Infinity Stones. If you can survive doing so, makes almost any character unstoppable. But even in the comics, when Thanos has not been armed with the gauntlet, he has managed to decimate entire planets and threaten the existence of life on Earth and throughout the universe time and time again. It's the Mad Titan's strong will and determination, as well as his physical might and prowess, that makes him so deadly, not the Infinity Gauntlet necessarily, whether or not he has it in the comics or the MCU. Strong without it. Number 2. Phalanx. The Phalanx are believed to be the creator of the Technarchy. They're an alien race that flies around assimilating planets, draining them of all their energy and absorbing all their resources and knowledge. Once your planet is infected, there is not much that can be done. They will either kill you or have you join them. They often destroy planets by infecting them with the techno-organic virus, which spreads and attracts the Technarchy, who don't even know that they are pawns of the Phalanx and were created by them. What's more, once infected, there is not much you can do at all to defend yourself against that virus, unless you are an Omega level telekinetic mutant like Cable, which, you know, most people aren't. Number 1. Mephisto. Mephisto is one of the biggest, most overpowered villains around. He can alter reality, trap you in another dimension, is a master manipulator and deal maker. He's basically Marvel's version of the devil. In fact, Mephisto is pretty content with being compared to or referred to as the devil, although he is yet to be confirmed as the devil itself and is instead believed to be just an extremely powerful demon. And I mean extremely powerful. To highlight just how powerful, we are going to talk about the latest issue of 2018's Avengers, issue number 34, which just came out. So, spoilers ahead. Warning, warning! Moon Knight has been up to some pretty suspicious activity recently in preparation for what will be, from what the Moon God Khonshu has shared with Mark Spector, some great threat. It turns out this OP threat was none other than Mephisto, or at least Mephisto was a part of it. And it took all the powers and relics that Moon Knight had taken from other heroes in order for him to defeat Mephisto once and for all, apparently. But, you know, we'll see. Not even Khonshu himself seems pretty confident in that. While Mephisto's powers may have strange restrictions, dying in mortality has not been known to be a weakness of his in the past, and overpowered villains who are defeated or who die in comics are usually more likely to return even more powerful than stay dead. Number 10. Magic. Ilyana Rasputina is Colossus's younger sister. She originally joined the X-Men with some basic teleportation powers. At a young age, she was kidnapped and taken to Limbo by Belasco. She also got some sweet magical training. Belasco put part of her soul in a bloodstone and told her that he loved her while she was 6 years old. Yeah, it's creepy. Creepy. And while she was in there, she was also beaten, and it wasn't until her rescue by Shadow and Cat, and later her continued training under Belasco, that granted her the power to overtake her kidnapper and become the Queen of Limbo, and eventually leave this reality she was trapped in. Upon her return to the X-Men, she was souped on magic, had her teleportation powers, and was also armed with her weapon, Soul Sword. She kind of gave me some Leona vibes from League of Legends, which just adds to her powerful presence in my mind. Number 9. Colossus. That's right, Magic's big bro. Pyotr Rasputin is also on this list. Given the codename Colossus, after agreeing to attend Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, he is able to change his skin to armor at will. His armor is durable, strong, and almost impenetrable. To give you an idea of just how tough Colossus is, I will point you to a moment where he took on the Juggernaut. Yeah, that's right. While his armored skin is susceptible to damage from adamantium and vibranium, his armor is otherwise impenetrable. And you all saw how much of a beating he took in the first Deadpool movie when he took on Angel. Oddly enough, the Deadpool version of Colossus is more accurate than the X-Men film version of him. I guess we'll see if Colossus gets to remain as overpowered and Russian in the MCU. But hopefully we will be safe from American Colossus, because that's a version that maybe needs to be stopped. Number 8. Wolverine. The amount of that Logan has gone through is astounding. Wolverine is a character that often just does not know when to call it quits. He has Terminator level staying power. Actually, maybe beyond Terminator. What am I even saying? Due to his insane regeneration and healing factor, he can survive almost anything. Even as old man Logan, he manages to take an impressive beating and still get up. As long as you give Wolverine something to fight for, he will keep coming at you, and he might even go feral on you. And even if you don't give him a reason, he just generally enjoys fighting. Beyond his healing factor though, he has something else working hard to protect him: his popularity armor. Potentially stronger than plot armor. I don't know. Which one's stronger? Number 7. Captain America. Captain America's bravery and leadership is truly what pushes him into overpowered territory. Sure, he's strong and noble. I mean, in Avengers Endgame, we even got treated to watching him fly around with Thor's hammer Mjolnir. But beyond that, he just doesn't give up. Which we also see in that scene when he painfully straps his shield onto his broken arm, basically using it as a splint. Ooh. If that isn't hardcore, I surely do not know what is. And even when he loses his strength after Red Skull uses the cosmic cube in the comics to alter reality, turning Cap into a weak old man, he still manages to whoop Red Skull's butt, even after Cap's had his strength just zapped away. Sure, he's had a lot of deaths in the comics, but all of them have been retconned and explained as either Cap was alive but in stasis, or Cap actually just faked his own death. So if he appears to die, I definitely would not trust it. When he appears to die, sure, it'll happen again. Number 6. Wonder Woman. While Wonder Woman has died before, she pretty much always gets resurrected. Another hero who just can't stay down due to her popularity. Not only is she royalty, but she is also a goddess. If you're at a god level, by the way, you are definitely overpowered. And such is the case with Diana. Cersei is actually one of the few that has ever been able to end Diana Prince, but as I said earlier, she still is sort of impervious to death as she's always resurrected. You may think that Diana's powers rely on her flashy accessories, but this is actually not true. Even without them, she has herself been imbued with powers of the gods, proving that there is truly only one Wonder Woman. Fellow Amazonian Artemis once tried to step in for Diana and take up the Wonder Woman mantle, but she fell in battle, apologizing to Diana for disgracing her name and proving that to be Wonder Woman, you have to be next level strong. Number 5. Jean Grey. Here I'm going to be talking about as Jean Grey as the Phoenix and both without the Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is actually so entwined with Jean, I don't think that it would ever actually let her die. It has saved Jean on more than one occasion and helps her to unlock her true potential, making her a scary level of powerful, especially if she turns dark. Still, even without the Phoenix Force, Jean can be terrifying. In the Battle of Atom storyline, a version of her appears under the guise of Lady Zorn and goes up against Emma Frost and her younger self. She handily defeats Emma in a psychic battle, leaving her to rightfully scream, "Why won't you ever stay dead?" In the end, only Jean can defeat Jean in this battle. Young Jean beats old Jean. Jean on Jean. Number 4. Nate Gray. I feel very sad about putting Nate above his mom Jean, she's one of my favorites, but it's true. This guy is on a whole other level when it comes to anyone previously mentioned here. He is definitely one of the most powerful mutants to ever exist in the comics. Unrelated, I should also just say that I really love his tattoo. Should I get a Nate Gray tattoo? I mean, I definitely need an X-Men tattoo of some kind, right? Even when Nate Gray has died in the comics, his presence always seems to survive, which allows him to eventually reform. Telepaths may also be known in the comics as kind of weaklings, because, you know, they're squishy because of their lack of physical strength. But Nate has the ability to channel his telekinetic energy into himself and enhance his physiology, allowing him to even be strong enough to take on Ares in a fight. Yeah. And I think he only lost that fight because he wanted to. Number 3. Dr. Manhattan. The scale of Dr. Manhattan's powers is pretty next level. In a sense, he is God in the DC universe, as he is now responsible for creating the New 52 and the characters in it. He can alter matter on a molecular level, like he did when he destroyed Rorschach, just basically splatting him out of existence. Or exploding him out of existence? Either way, you know what I mean. Similar to Nick Gray, he can never seemingly die, as he could just regen himself as long as his consciousness remains. And I mean, how does one even kill someone's consciousness? Ghostbusters? Number 2, Sentry. I can't have part 1 of a list where we talk about overpowered superheroes and not include the Sentry. Dude's got the power of 1 million exploding suns up his sleeves after all. Beyond how insanely strong he is though, Sentry can also mess with people's minds. He has implanted memories before and was actually responsible for erasing everyone on Earth's memories of him as well. Though he kinda got some help with that one. Really, his only weakness is his agoraphobia and sort of himself, as his alter ego the Void is one of the strongest supervillains around, and without the Void, there is no Sentry. Number 1, Superman. While Superman may have died multiple times in comics, films, and TV, he can never, ever stay dead. He's one of the most iconic superheroes that we have in pop culture, and it is this that protects him from ever really going away. This is also a remarkable superpower for Superman to wield, as he has been around for a very, very long time in comics. And although his character has changed over the years, his core sense of self has always remained the same. He always seems to be fairly consistent in how he problem solves and what he stands for. Superman also has to be one of the strongest heroes around, and was known for being OP even before the term was coined. As the 1940 Superman cartoon would remind us, he's faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. I love old cartoons, they're so much fun. Number 10, Purple Man. Purple Man is one of those villains who appears unstoppable because if you try to stop him, he can kinda just command you to stop what you are doing and even potentially kill yourself. Dr. Doom ended up using his powers to rule the entire world, which makes his power set kinda crazy. However, it does have at least somewhat of a limitation or weakness, which is nice. Those with indomitable will, such as Dr. Doom himself, can resist the influence of Purple Man's pheromone-based abilities. Also, in theory, if you can't breathe in the pheromones, then his powers have no effect on you. Still, even with his weaknesses, in the Jessica Jones Netflix series, they did a good job of making the Purple Man, or Kilgrave as he's known, played by David Tennant, feel like an unconquerable foe and a horrific threat. Number 9, Griever at the End of All Things. The Griever at the End of All Things was a villain who randomly shows up in Fantastic Four in 2018. She claimed her purpose was to survive beyond the edge of existence and mourn its loss when everything had finally come to an end. For some reason, she did not like the fact that the Future Foundation was attempting to create new universes using Molecule Man's help. She felt they were taking on a role that was greater than them. She had just been introduced when she managed to obliterate Molecule Man, who was previously known for being an indestructible and very capable villain before all of this, overpowering in his own right. And yes, this random villain, who has only thus far appeared in 3 issues, handily defeated him. Hopefully we'll see more of her because she was given so much power right off the bat that it would be weird to have her kill Molecule Man, tie her to the existence and death of everything, and then just never have her pop up again. Her and her weird buff tardigrade looking minions known as Endlings. At least they look like scary versions of tardigrades to me.
Number 8, the Sentry. So the Sentry has been both a good guy and a bad guy, so that's why he is on this list. I mean, also, he is the definition of overpowered. Like, his powers keep expanding and nothing can kill him. The smartest minds in the Marvel Universe can't find a way to kill him. Like, he's literally been thrown into the sun and survived. He's beaten the Hulk in a fight, his powers are essentially limitless, and he is a bit crazy, so that makes him even scarier. I mean, if he was sane, then you wouldn't have to worry about it, but the fact that he's scary, it just... ugh. Number 7, Galactus. People call him the Devourer of Worlds. That right there tells you how powerful he is. That, and the fact that he is insanely massive. Galactus basically goes around because that's how he survives. He is powered by the Power Cosmic, which basically allows him to do anything he wants. He is one of the most feared villains in the Marvel Universe. And, fun fact, he has been seen in live action before. Just not the way fans were expecting. In the 2007 film, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer, his mission was the same. He even had Silver Surfer as his herald. The only other thing was that he just looked a little bit different. In that version, he was just a big cloud that traveled through space. Number 6, Doomsday. Doomsday will forever be known as the creature that killed Superman. And everyone knows how powerful Superman is. People often say Superman is overpowered, so the guy that managed to kill him must be pretty darn strong. When Doomsday showed up, almost every member of the Justice League couldn't do anything until Soup showed up to help. Now, we've also seen Doomsday in live action a few times. Once in the TV show Smallville, another during Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and another during the short-lived show Krypton. Number 5. Hela, the MCU version. To this day, Hela is still one of the best villains the MCU has ever had. Seriously, she was great. And she was super powerful. As the film went on, she just kept getting stronger and stronger. She destroyed Thor's hammer within the first 15 minutes of the movie. That right there shows you how freaking powerful she is. It was revealed later on that her powers are tied to Asgard itself, so when she got there, she was virtually unstoppable. Thor did put up a good fight though, but ultimately the only way to defeat her was to bring about Ragnarok, which was, the destruction of Asgard. So if there's no Asgard, no more Hela in a sense. But always remember, Asgard is not a place, it's a people. Man, I love that movie so much. Number 4, the Anti-Monitor. The Anti-Monitor is considered to be one of the most powerful villains in DC Comics. Some say he is the most powerful, others say Darkseid, but regardless, they're both super strong. The Anti-Monitor destroyed an infinite number of Earths, which means trillions of people and heroes died because of him. It also just took tons of heroes, plus the Spectre, who is also super powerful in his own right, to stop him. To this day, he must have had one of the highest kill counts when it comes to killing heroes. I know some of it got undone later on, but still, you can't forget the fact that he was able to pull that off. He will remain one of the most overpowered but awesome villains in DC history. Number 3, Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix is one of the X-Men's greatest stories. When Jean Grey got infected with the Phoenix Force, almost nothing could stop her. The Phoenix Force is this endless bundle of energy. It's merged with multiple people over the years, but none come close to what it did when it was with Jean. Well, when it infected Cyclops, he did end up killing Xavier. So that's also really big. And whenever it leaves its host, if they are still living, it leaves a little bit of its energy in them, leaving them more powerful than they were before the Phoenix Force. And that's actually pretty cool. Number 2, Darkseid. When you think of big bad villains in the DC universe, one of the first ones to come to everyone's mind is Darkseid. Even non-comic fans are most likely aware of him. He's the villain that can take on the Justice League, and the whole league. Not just like the main 7 members, but all of the extended members. Even just the Dark, Teen Titans, anyone. He comes from the planet Apocalypse and wants to reshape the universe in his image. He has a wide array of abilities, but arguably his most famous and really overpowered one is his Omega Beam. It can move in any direction and is capable of destroying planets. That's how powerful it is. It can even travel fast enough to hit certain speedsters. Number 1, Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet. So, Thanos is already powerful on his own, but when he has all the Infinity Stones, he is unstoppable, basically, in the comics and films. In the Infinity Gauntlet comic, every hero in the Marvel Universe is trying to stop him, but he is just literally just hitting them away with flicks. It's crazy. Just think about that. The most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe were basically just nothing to him when he had the power of the stones. It even happened in the films. Once he got most of the stones, he could just throwing them back or hitting them away while he was just walking toward his goal. It was really cool to see though. And Thor almost ended it. If he just would have gone for the head. But then we wouldn't have gotten an Avengers Endgame. So in a way, I'm kind of glad he didn't, right? That's how we look at it.
In at number 10, The Flash. Let's get this out of the way straight off the top. The entire Justice League minus Batman is way too overpowered and they need to be stopped. Having the Flash in your team is the shining example of what an overpowered hero looks like. He can run faster than the speed of light and as a result is known as the fastest man alive. This simple overpowered ability is the focus because it allows for the Flash to do ridiculous things. He can run through walls, run up buildings, and even throw a punch at a super speed. Although it's not his combat that should be troubling for us normies, it's the fact that he can move so fast that he can travel through time. We all know that time travel in any sense has never turned out to have all positive results. results. The negative effects have even been felt after the Flash did this in the comic books, and I'm sure we wouldn't want that to be our reality. In at number 9, Green Lantern. Much like the Hulk, Hal Jordan actually becomes stronger from fighting with his enemies. Typically the Green Ring will drain its user's willpower, but Hal seems unaffected by this. Even if he's becoming overwhelmed by an opponent, he can easily defeat them with surges of his undefeatable will. On top of all that, the Green Ring allows for him to create anything from his thoughts into actual physical objects. For the most part, the Green Lantern's power is reserved for defending the universe, but even so, it's far too much power for a human like Hal to take on. Thankfully, if things did go sideways and we really wanted to stop him, all it would take is the color yellow. We know it sounds crazy, but that is actually the Green Lantern's weakness, so make sure you keep a stockpile of bananas real close.
Number 8. Archangel. One of the original founding members of the X-Men, Archangel, also known as Warren Worthington III, was first introduced in X-Men comics in the first issue of X-Men Volume 1, although at the time he went by the name Angel. This X-Men was born with actual wings, though his parents apparently did not notice the markings on his back that would lead to him growing wings later, and for the most part, he lived a normal life, somehow concealing his wings. Odd, right? At an early age, he became a vigilante hero, adopting the name Angel, and after joining the X-Men later changed his name to Archangel. Doesn't sound like he needs to be stopped, right? Well, think again. During the X-Factor series, he received a devastatingly overpowered upgrade when he became one of Apocalypse's Horsemen. He grew biometallic wings that were retractable, razor sharp, and could fire neurotoxin feathered darts. Ouch. Don't worry though, Archangel was stopped, in a sense, reverting to his former self after his biometallic wings molted. Yeah, because apparently metal feathers also molt? I don't know, who knew? Number 7. Storm. One of the most unique X-Men in terms of her origin story, Storm, also known as Aurora Monroe, was worshipped as a goddess when her powers first emerged, in contrast to most of her fellow X-Men who were, spurned for their abilities. While most of what we see in the comics and animated and live action adaptations is Storm's abilities to influence only localized weather, when prompted, her powers can be as dramatic as her accent in the X-Men film series from the 2000s. Storm suffers from some intense claustrophobia stemming from childhood trauma, and it is this fear that has prompted her full potential to be unleashed. Look at X-Men Volume 1 issue 147, where Aurora creates a severe storm that encompasses the whole Earth, threatening all of humanity, and being likened in the issue to the Phoenix. Adding Storm's powers into the mix in a world that is already suffering dramatically from global warming is next level risky. The world definitely doesn't need any more large scale natural disasters, thank you very much. Number 6. Cyclops. Often the leader of the X-Men team, Cyclops made this list less for his abilities and more for his sometimes questionable behavior and choices. He has some of the weirdest powers for someone who is an original member of the team. The ability to basically fire laser beams from his eyes. This power is so intense that it actually requires Cyclops, aka Scott Summers, to wear a visor in order to control his powers. Granted, apparently his eyelids are also strong enough to stop the lasers completely, which is weird, but hey, mutants, superheroes, comics. Moving past this ability, which can be very dangerous when left uncontrolled in and of itself, we also have to deal with the moral dilemmas created by some of Scott's actions. In Avengers vs. X-Men, his actions led to the return of the Phoenix Force and death of Charles Xavier by his own hand, after becoming full-on obsessed with the power of the Phoenix. Cyclops also tends to be loyal to his beliefs to a fault. In House of X, when steered towards Magneto's philosophies, we see him turn borderline villain, trying to forcefully separate mutant children from their non-mutant parents in an effort to protect them. Yuck. Number 5. Hope Summers. Not biologically related to Scott Summers. She's actually adopted into the Summers and Gray family. Hope has the potential to actually be the strongest X-Men out there, the most OP. She can duplicate other mutants' powers just by being near them. Similar to Rogue, but she doesn't actually need to make physical contact, and she doesn't drain them of life energy or their own powers while duplicating. However, it still makes her a formidable foe for any mutant. She can also take on a seemingly unlimited number of powers at a time. So if you team her up with a huge X-Men team, she would be pretty unstoppable. Combine this with the fact that she was raised by the badass Cable, and you have a next level X-Men on your hands. Not only this, but the Phoenix Force has always been fond of Hope. When Hope and the Phoenix Force merged, she became the White Phoenix, the only person who appeared to be able to not be driven mad by the Phoenix's power, and she was the only one strong enough to dispel its energy with the help of Scarlet Witch. That isn't overpowered. I don't know what is. Number 4. Wolverine. Is there such a thing as too much Wolverine? I'd like to say no, but at this point I'm starting to think there just might be. Wolverine is now seen as probably one of the most popular X-Men and superheroes of all time. He has even held Avenger status, making everyone obsess over the thought of perhaps getting to see him join the MCU in the Avengers Infinity War Endgame post-credits, which sadly for Wolverine fans did not happen. Wolverine, aka James Howlett, or better known as just Logan, boasts of a mutation involving retractable bone claws and regenerative healing abilities. After having adamantium added to his skeleton, he became even more powerful. He has had more thrown at him than most superheroes, and as a result, we have seen his powers expanded in the comics. He's also known to age slowly, one of the few characters where we actually address this issue of, like never seeming to age. At one point he was even considered immortal, having a pact with Azrael, the angel of death, that if he could beat him in a fight after dying, he would get to be resurrected. In Old Man Logan, when he's actually considered to be weaker, he still manages to battle an alternate version of the Hulk. Granted, Logan really only needs to be stopped if you feel like you've had too much of him. Have you? Number 3. Rogue. With her power-stealing and life-draining abilities, Rogue, aka Anna Marie LeBeau, is one of the most insanely overpowered X-Men around. Considering she has also played the villain before, she might also be one to consider, putting a stop sign in front of. Like, hold up. Before joining the X-Men, Rogue was a runaway who was taken in by Mystique and the Brotherhood of Mutants. She almost killed Miss Marvel, now known as Captain Marvel, by touching her. Rogue was used to temporarily taking mutants' powers and weakening them, but in Miss Marvel's case, she held on a little bit too long, stealing Carol Danvers' powers in a more permanent sense and leaving her in a coma. Rogue also accidentally absorbs her psyche without intending to. Her level of powers and lack of control are the most concerning. Though of course, in the X-Men Legacy series, Rogue gains full control of her abilities after Danger and Professor X were able to figure out how her abilities work and alter her mind to help her gain control, allowing her to kiss Gambit. Aw, I love those two together. Number 2. Professor X. What's more terrifying than a mutant who can read your mind and the minds of everyone else on the planet all at once at any distance? One who can also influence your mind, possibly without you knowing. Hence why Professor Charles Xavier makes number 2 on the list. Granted, Professor X usually uses his abilities for good, but as we see in the film Logan, even the best intentions may not protect those you love from the darker sides of one's powers. In Logan, we see an aged Professor X masterfully played by the only Professor X in my mind, Sir Patrick Stewart. This version of Charles is suffering from a degenerative brain disease that affects his memories, causes seizures, and causes him to lose control of his powers as well. And we learn that the worst has happened. He has supposedly, accidentally, used his powers to kill members of the X-Men and hurt countless numbers of people as well. Yikes. Poor Patrick Stewart. Number 1. Jean Grey. The only person unchained who could be scarier than Professor X Unchained would be Jean Grey, especially when under the influence of the Phoenix Force. You may be thinking at this point that the Phoenix Force is the real star of this list, and hey, you may be right. I definitely have a Phoenix obsession of my own. However, the fact remains that what the Phoenix Force really gives you is access to your full potential. And this is terrifying with Jean because her full potential is insane. Granted, originally in the comics, Phoenix was a separate entity that existed while Jean was chilling and healing in a cocoon under the ocean, but in the films and animated series, Phoenix has been presented as a melding of minds, which is also how it has been explained in later comics like with the Phoenix 5. Jean is one of the strongest X-Men ever, a stronger telepath than Charles Xavier. While her influence over a mind may not be as finessed or as subtle as his, she could definitely control your mind in a similar way. The only difference is you would probably know she was doing it as opposed to maybe thinking the actions were of your own volition. While both these scenarios are equally terrifying, the idea of knowing you have no control over your actions while trying to fight back and losing is, in my mind, even more terrifying.